Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about a conversation that has been floating around the MapleStory community for a very long time, to be honest with you. But I've been seeing it a lot more recently. I made a video where I talked about it a little bit, and I had a stream where I was talking about it for a long time and engaging with the community and hearing what they think about it. So I want to make this video to talk about Pitched Boss on this game, the gear set, what it is, what the issues with it are and how you get it, and just a conversation around it. And I want to open a discussion in the comments or wherever if you want to type in my Discord about it or anything like that. I'm curious what you guys think. Another reason is because in my last video where I talked about some of the problems with MapleStory and the state of MapleStory, I talked about Pitch Boss and I gave my idea for a potential solution to make it a little bit easier. But I got a lot of comments that were really good. So I want to say thank you first of all for commenting and sharing your thoughts on it, because a lot of the comments you guys gave me a different outlook, and it was nice seeing that we could have a conversation without just yelling at each other and being angry. So it was very good, and I want to continue that conversation in this video. So before I start with anything, maybe I didn't paint the picture as well as I could have for what my idea is. And also I want to say that I'm very open to hearing what you guys think, right? Like if you have any ideas on this, definitely leave a comment. I do read all of the comments. Even if I don't sometimes reply to all of them, I do read all of them. And I'm definitely curious what you guys think about it. We could definitely have a conversation about it and not hate each other, you know what I mean? Because that's what always happens on the internet. Anyways, let's continue. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what even is Pitch Boss if you have no idea what this is, and why is it important, and why do people keep talking about it, right? Why do you keep hearing this term Pitch Boss? Why is this such a big deal? So first of all, you know how in this game there's a bunch of different gear sets? Like there's Eternal gear, there's Arcane gear, Absolab gear, CRA gear, stuff like that. Pitched Boss is just another set of gear on this game. Specifically, it's a set of accessories. So for example, the Dreamy Belt from Lucid is a Pitched Boss item. The Commanding Force earrings from Darknell is another Pitched Boss item. Stuff like that. It's just another set of gear that you can get on this game that makes you stronger. In fact, it's the best set of gear for your accessories on this game. Now, there are a few problems with this gear that make it very frustrating as a player. First of all, the acquisition rate, which I think is the biggest problem in the gear, the acquisition rate, how you get it, how often you get it is the biggest issue. So not only is it just a super rare drop from the bosses, there is no way of getting it more guaranteed or really increasing your chances of getting it without obviously drop gear. I'm just going to assume people are breaking the boxes with max drop gear or as high drop gear as you can, at least 400%, right? So what this ends up being is you can have people that have cleared certain bosses, like Damien, for example, 500 times and still don't have a 22-star magic eye patch. The other thing that is kind of a problem, but also not really a problem, it's just like a weird thing that we have to deal with in GMS specifically, is we have the Golok set. So the Superior Golok set is a very powerful set of gear. And the reason why it could be conflicting with the Pitched Boss set is because you could see they take up the same slots, and the Pitched Boss set, not only does it have to be 22 for it to replace the Golok's gear, you would also need multiple pieces to be better than the set effect of what Golok's gives. The Golok's gives a really strong set effect, and it also has really good base stats. Like for example, if you look at 22-star Superior Belt, it has 120 attack on it. Look at a 22-star Dreamy Belt, it has 112 attack on it. Obviously it has a lot more stat and better pot and whatnot, but it just goes to show that the Golok's gear is very strong. So you have this set of gear in the game that is not only very hard to get, you also have to 22 it, and you have to get multiple pieces just so they could barely be better than the Golok's gear. So it just makes this set of gear essentially very hard to get, very hard to complete, unlike any other set of gear. You can have people with finished Eternals, finished Arcanes, liberated, all this stuff, yet they only have maybe one Pitch Boss or 0 or 2, whatever it is, right? And then you can have some people that are super lucky that have it all finished and they're like level 275 or something. So what I'm trying to get at is the variance with Pitch Boss is just so big, and a lot of people find it very frustrating. So in this video, I want to talk about what my potential solution to this is and why I have reached this conclusion, and you guys tell me what you think Maybe I'm delusional. I'm perfectly okay with being wrong, perfectly okay with you guys telling me what the flaws are in my plan, what the flaws are in my logic and my reasoning. 100%. I want to hear what you guys think. And I'm perfectly okay with, being wrong. Like, maybe my idea doesn't work, but I want to at least show you guys how I came to this conclusion. And you guys tell me if it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. So I have MS Paint here. And what I like to do when I think of a problem on this game is I like to backtrack the problem as far as possible and try to think, who is this problem affecting and why is this problem even in the game in the first place? So the first question I ask myself is, should there be a set of gear that you obtain through RNG on this game? So that's the first question I ask myself. Now, some of you might say, no, there shouldn't be any gear set that is obtained through RNG on this game. Everything should be a guaranteed obtainment whenever you do something. Like whether it's kill 1,000 mobs, you get a gear, or kill a boss, you get a gear. It should always be guaranteed. Now, a different game like Final Fantasy XIV, for example, when you clear a Savage Raid, you get pieces that you can use to buy the gear, or I think sometimes you get the gear itself, and that's like some of the best gear in the whole game. That's just like a different way of getting gear in this game. MapleStory has different methods of getting gear too. Some of the gear like Sea Ray and Eternals are more guaranteed. You get a certain amount of them every single week when you clear the boss, but there's other gear that's completely RNG, like Pitched Boss Set or Oz Rings, for example. So that's the first question. Like, should there be a set of gear that you obtain through RNG in this game? If the answer is no, then at the end of the day, you're not going to like the pitch boss system, and there's probably nothing that could change your mind about it. And that's totally okay. You know what I mean? That's totally okay to think that there shouldn't be any gear on this game that is RNG. But unfortunately, we live in a world where some of the gear is RNG, right? So we're just going to have to accept that that's the reality of this game at the moment. But if you don't like that, then your problem stems deeper than just pitch boss. Your problem is that you don't want RNG gear in the game at all. If you don't want any gear on this game to be obtained through RNG, that's totally fine. Like, that's a totally fine, valid opinion to have. Like, you don't want anything to be RNG when it comes to acquisition of gear, and you want everything to be guaranteed obtained after a certain point. And that's totally fine. But unfortunately, that's not the case right now with pitch. So we're just going to have to deal with the way it is right now. So we've realized that there is RNG in this game, right? When it comes to getting gear. The next question that I ask myself is, should that RNG gear be what prevents you from clearing bosses, right? So pitched boss in particular, like, do I need this gear to clear everything in the game? Like, is that the case? Should the RNG gear be what prevents me from clearing a boss? Like, would I need this to clear everything? I think in this case, most people are going to say no. Obviously fucking not. Why would I want to rely on gear that's super RNG just so I could feel strong and just so I can clear everything in the game? I think we're all on the same page with that one. So now the next thing that I ask myself is, how far can you get without pitched boss, aka the RNG gear that exists in the game? How far can you actually get? What's the limit in reality? So for me, I think on the heroic world, you can get to H Culling, X-Slot solo, normal limbo clear with 0 pitch at all on your gear. I think that's like the limit. You know, H Culling, you can argue a little bit maybe, but I would say that's probably the limit. Essentially, you can't clear Extreme Kalos, and you can't clear Extreme Culling, and you can't clear Hard Limbo. Now, Extreme Culling, nobody can clear it at the moment, so that's whatever. But Extreme Kalos and H Limbo, some people can clear, and if you don't have any pitch or like maxed out gear, you probably can't clear those bosses, which definitely sucks. It definitely sucks that there are some bosses that you can't clear if you don't have maxed out gear, which includes RNG gear. But let's look at the numbers and see in reality how many people this is actually affecting, and if this is the only reason why you can't clear the bosses. So on this game, there is an achievements tab, and the achievements tab tells you how many accounts on all of global MapleStory, including the reg servers, Chronos and Hyperion, have achieved a certain achievement. So if we look at Extreme Lotus, defeat Extreme Lotus by yourself, 0.19%. So I'm going to write that down. Now keep in mind, this is across all the servers. So in your own world, it's probably less than this in reality. If you look at Hard Culling, it's 0.06%. And again, in reality, because it includes reg servers, it's even less for the heroic world. And then if we look at normal limbo, 0.49%. So when we look at these numbers, we realize that you can progress further than 99.51% of players if you want to just lowball it and talk about limbo only, in reality, it's even more than this. You could progress further than like almost 99.9% of players with no pitch boss at all. Now, this is a bit of a side point to my entire point and how I've reached my conclusion for my solution for pitch boss is that you can go anywhere between 99.51% to 99.94%. You can be more progressed and more accomplished than, you know, up to like 99.95% of players on this game with zero pitched boss. So my side point to this entire conversation is, who does this really affect? How big of a problem is this in reality? And is this being blown out of proportion? You let me know what you think about that. The reason I bring this up is because I constantly see many people that are in their 270s, maybe they're in their 280s, and they are very like pulling their hair out, stressing out over pitched boss, which for me, I just find that so funny because it's like, this is like a non-issue for you. There's so many other things that you could do to get stronger, but you're fixated on the one RNG thing so much, and you're losing your mind over it. I know people that have quit over not getting pitch boss, right? Which I just find insane. Now, at the end of the day, you could quit and be angry about whatever you want. To me, it just seems illogical a little bit when you look at the numbers and how far you can actually get without it. But again, that's a bit of a side point. Let's continue with this thought process and see where it lands. So if we come to the conclusion that yes, pitch boss does make you stronger, but you can still clear over 99.9% of content without it, then why do some people still feel like they're weak? Why do people feel like they're not doing any damage? What actually makes you weak, and where does a lot of your damage come from? So that's the next question. What actually makes you weak on this game? And in turn, what actually gives you damage? So for me, when I think about this, a lot of people will say it's pitch boss. If I don't have pitch boss, I'm not going to be strong. Is that actually true? Is that actually true? If you don't have pitch boss, yet you can still clear over 99% of the content in the game, does that make you weak? No, I don't think so, to be honest with you. I think the main things that make you strong on this game are grinding. So this is everything that includes leveling, hexastat, hexamatrix, legion, like all of that stuff, right? Like what makes MapleStory? MapleStory is grinding your character. So I would say like from 0 to 290, from 0 legion to 9k legion, like all of that stuff is grinding. And then grinding also means making your gear. So the standard set of equips on this game, full 22, 3-line, decent flame, stuff like that. The stuff that's guaranteed, the stuff that's not, you know, waiting room or pitch boss. I'm talking about like 22 Golux, 22 CRA, slime ring, twilight mark, all that kind of stuff, like that type of grind. So that's what gives you damage in this game, obviously. So grinding. The next thing is hands. So what does hands mean? Hands means your practice in playing your class and your practice in doing a boss. Obviously, if somebody who doesn't know how to do a boss enters a boss, they're going to get packed up and they're not going to know what to do and they're going to die out. But if you have a lot of practice in a boss, and not only the boss practice, you have a lot of practice in doing your own class rotations, like you know how to optimize your own damage, you know what cooldowns to use at the right time, that will give you a lot of damage because you know what you're doing, right? So that's very important as well. And the third one, which I think is very important too, is what class you play. So when I think of the pitch boss issue at large and I break it down like this, a lot of other issues come up that I personally think are more problematic than pitch boss in its entirety. So for me, I just find it a little strange how stressed out people are about pitched boss, but if you really break down the pitched boss issue, how I'm doing right now, you'll find a myriad of other problems that I think are even bigger, and the class is a big one. So we know that obviously there are some classes that are stronger than others, but the disparity between the top strongest and the bottom strongest is massive. I'm talking about like almost double damage. Like that's how big of a difference it is from top end to bottom end, or like 50 final damage or something like that. It's like a huge gap. So a lot of people will be so fixated on not having pitch boss, and that's the reason why they're weak. But in reality, they might just be playing a weak class in its entirety, and that's why they don't feel as strong. But the crazy thing is, even a weak class can still clear over 99% of the content. So that's why I always say in videos that recommend you what to play, that you could play whatever you want, because at the end of the day, you could still do more than 99% of the game on any class. So again, this is a little bit of a side point, but if people are super stressed out about pitched boss, I feel like we should also be annoyed and comment about the class imbalancing issues on this game. The fact that we're not balanced around our own class's damage output on our own server with attack speed and whatnot leads to a very, very imbalanced game. Now, Korean MapleStory isn't even any better. Korean MapleStory, where we get a lot of our updates from, is also a very imbalanced game. So it's just like across the board, the balancing on this game is dog, which I think is a much bigger issue than Pitch Boss. But of course, we could have multiple issues at the same time and comment about them at the same time. They don't have to be all independent of each other. I just want to point out these additional issues whenever we think about the Pitch Boss issue. So the next question is, who does pitch affect the most? Essentially, who's suffering the most from the current Pitch Boss system? This is what I like to ask myself as well. So if we know that grinding and practicing bosses / your class and what class you play, if this is what makes you strong on this game, like if this is the vast majority of the reason why you're strong on this game, and we know that you can clear over 99% of the content with 0 pitch, then who does the pitch problem actually affect and who does it affect the most? So when I asked this question on my stream, this is a comment I got about it, and I think this is a very good answer to this question, and I'll explain why. So who does pitch affect the most? First of all, obviously it affects everybody. Everybody who can clear bosses that drop pitch all experience the garbage, RNG, extreme variance of the pitch boss system, right? Obviously, I want to make that absolutely clear. I'm not just trying to say that this problem only affects endgamers. But what I am trying to say is that this problem affects endgamers more than it affects non-endgamers, because non-endgamers, right? So if we break down this comment, so it says endgame players, the reason why it's endgame players is because non-endgame players have many ways to still get stronger and clear content in the game, right? Whereas endgame players do not have many methods. They finish their grind, they're 290 plus, they're super practiced, they can't really get too much better on the game, and the class. So this is a big one, right? That's why he specifically says whose classes are good enough to do the absolute hardest bosses, which is also very, very true, and is also something that is a reality on this game. So not only does it mostly affect endgamers, it affects an endgamer more than an early game player, it also affects people who play the quote-unquote right classes for endgame. So let's say you play something like Phantom. It doesn't really matter if you have all the pitch in the world or if you have really good gear, because at the end of the day, your class is much weaker and it's still going to be very hard for you to clear the end game content, right? Because your class is just weaker. So your problem is worse than just pitch boss only, right? Your problem is deeper. The problem is that there's imbalancing in the game, and that's a much bigger issue than pitch boss, right? But let's say you play a, middle of the pack class or a stronger class like Hayato, for example, right? Like the class that I play, then the pitch boss matters a lot because you are playing a class that does have enough damage output to join these parties, but now you're cucked by your gear, right? So it makes it even more annoying because you could do it in theory, but you just don't have the gear to do it. Whereas if you play a weak class, it's like, even if I had the gear to do it, I can't do it, which is a even bigger issue, right? Like both of those situations are bad, but I think this answer is more accurate as to who does it affect the most, the current pitch boss system, right? So the next question I want to ask is, should players who play more have better gear? Now, I got mixed answers on this on my stream, and that's totally okay. Again, I want to reiterate so many times, it's totally okay to disagree with me. It's totally okay to see the game in a different way that I do, and it's completely okay to comment about it, and I have no issues. I won't see you guys any differently, and I hope you guys won't see me differently either. This is just the way that I'm trying to break down the situation and come to a conclusion. So should players who play more have better gear? For me, I think so. Yeah, I think if somebody put in 5,000 hours into the game and they've grinded their butt off, they're level 290 and have a ton of Legion, a ton of mules and stuff like that, that person should have better gear than somebody who just started 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Because they put in more effort and more hours and have unlocked more content in the game and they have better gear. When I say somebody should have better gear if they play longer, I'm not saying it's like, all right, like somebody who plays longer, like all of a sudden they should have stuff that you can't get. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about legacy, for example. I'm talking about if you grinded for something more than somebody else, should you be more rewarded for it? Me personally, I think so. Like if I put in 5,000 hours into training my main, I'd expect that my main is in a much stronger spot than somebody who just started playing. Like to me, I feel like that's like a logical conclusion. A lot of people disagreed with me on that though, saying that everybody should have the same opportunity no matter where they are in the game. But for me, I just don't think that's true. I think somebody who hit level 290 should have more opportunities than somebody who hit level 240 because you've just unlocked more of the game. That's the way that I think. You could totally disagree with me if you want. So if we combine all of these things, right? If we combine the fact that you can get really far with no pitch, we combine the fact that being weak on this game isn't necessarily just related to pitch. It's about these three things that's a way bigger factor in being weak. Don't be like this guy wasting his time making his own food. You got to get back to getting gains on MapleStory. If you spend an hour a day making yourself food, you would be missing out on around 4.5 billion messes a week and like 200 fragments. That's why I partnered up with Factor to give you guys fresh, never frozen gourmet meals straight to your door. I've tried it out myself and the food is unironically good and takes only 2 minutes to be ready. My community loves it too. So stop being dumb and wasting all your mesos and get Factor using my link below to get 50% off your first box and free shipping. Thank you guys so much for supporting me, and thank you Factor for sponsoring, and enjoy the rest of the video. If we also combine the fact that pitch boss affects endgamers the most, specifically endgamers that play stronger classes and weaker classes, to be honest with you, it's just endgamers in general, but I think the people who play the stronger classes, because they have the opportunity to clear the boss, because they're not hindered by their class, it also affects them even more because then they actually could do something, but they're just cucked by their gear. And then we also combine the fact that people who play longer should have better gear. Then what's the solution? What's the solution? To me, my solution is a pitch boss pity system that people who have played the game longer, so longer term players, they would be able to benefit more from it than people who haven't played the game as long. That's one of the conclusions that I've reached, is that you would have a system that somebody who has played the game for a very, very long time, they get the benefits more from somebody who just started playing. Now, again, you can disagree with me, but the way that I see it is if you're a fresh level 260, should you be able to have the exact same gear as somebody who hit 290? I think people who are earlier game work on the gear sets that are available to them, and then as they get stronger, they unlock new gear sets and they unlock more opportunities. To me, that's how an MMO is played. When you're early game, you work with the early game gear and stuff like that, and then as you get to mid game, you get access to mid game gear and upgrade it, and then you get to late game, you upgrade to late game gear, and you get to end game, you upgrade to end game gear. That's the way that I see MMOs. Some people don't see it that way, and again, that's totally okay. It just depends on what kind of game that you want to play. Some people, I remember when I was talking about this on stream, they see it like no matter what level you are, you should be able to get any gear you want in the game and start immediately grinding for it. So whether you're level 200 or you're level 290, you can both immediately start grinding for that best in slot gear. And if that's the way that you want to play the game, that's totally fine. And that's the way that you prefer the game to be. But MapleStory is not that way right now, right? Maybe it could be in the future, but I don't think it will be that way in the future, to be honest with you. But that's not how it is right now regardless. So if that's the type of game and gear progression that you want, MapleStory doesn't have that type of gear progression. MapleStory's gear progression is very restricted by what level you are. For example, you can't work on Eternals until you can start clearing Kalos and Kaling, right? So no matter how hard you try, if you're level 230, you will never get Eternals unless you level up. Now, I really don't mean this from like an elitist perspective of like, I'm stronger than you. That means I'm better than you and I deserve better gear than you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying like if somebody is higher level, they have accessed more of the game, meaning they probably have more opportunities than you. That's the way that I look at it. So pitch boss pity system that longer term players benefit more than short term players. A lot of people have had very different suggestions on how that works. So some people suggest that you can use the boss etc items. So for example, I got a bunch of these from Damien. They don't really do anything for me. Maybe I could trade a certain amount of them and get an eye patch. Same with Lucid, same with Will. If I trade a certain amount of them, I get the pitch. Now that makes sense because, the only reason I have a lot of them is because I've been clearing it every single week. But I feel one of the issues with this is I feel like a lot of people wouldn't be incentivized to grind. They would just keep clearing the bosses every single week, and eventually they'll get their gear, which is it's okay. You know what I mean? Like that's an okay solution. I'm not opposed to that at all. To be honest, anything that makes it easier, I'm not opposed to it. Like, I'm just being honest here. Like, anything that makes it easier, I'm not opposed to it. I just feel like there could be better solutions. I just don't think it's like the most optimal one necessarily, but it is a solution, right? Where you could do this. Another thing that people suggested is if you have multiples of pitch boss items, especially on Heroic World, if you have multiples, you can't do anything with it, right? Like, I have multiple emblems. What the fuck am I supposed to do with all these emblems, right? You would be able to trade pitch boss items, but I feel like another issue with this is not every single pitch boss item is equal to each other, I guess. Like, for example, somebody who is able to clear hard Saren or clear extreme Saren, they'll get a lot more emblems, and they would have a much bigger advantage than somebody who doesn't do that. But is that an issue? Maybe not, right? Maybe not. Like, it rewards you for being stronger and stuff like that. So, or I don't think this is a bad suggestion either. I think this is totally fine, totally valid way of doing it. And there are probably other ways of doing it that you guys can think of as well. And again, I'd be interested to hear what you guys say. Now, it doesn't have to be only one solution, right? I think there could be multiple solutions to this, and they could be implemented, multiple solutions at a time. It doesn't just have to be the one solution. The solution that I proposed was making more extreme bosses, right? So that's the solution I proposed, and I think is one of the best ways to introduce a pity system on this game without it being too free. Because if we go back to the first question, should there be a set of gear that you obtain through RNG in this game? For me, I think I wouldn't mind it. Like, I wouldn't mind either way. If there was no RNG in the way you get certain gear, and if there is RNG in the way that you get certain gear. The big thing is the second question. Like, I don't want that RNG gear to be the reason why I can't clear something. Like, I don't like that. I hate that. I think that's so stupid, right? But if there is a set of gear that's obtained through RNG, I don't mind it. I think it's okay for that to be the case. It just has to be more of like a bonus thing instead of like a mandatory thing. And in my opinion, I think it is a bonus thing. I don't see it as a mandatory thing in the game at the moment. So if we go back to that first question, I think implementing extreme bosses with higher chance of pitch is probably the best way to go about it. So the key thing is the extreme bosses must be clearable with no pitch, right? Just like how Extreme Lotus is clearable with no pitch and has a higher chance of getting Zerk. You could get Total Control, higher chance of Blackheart, all that stuff. The extreme bosses need to be clearable without any pitched boss, which makes it so that if you do grind a lot and you do get stronger and you reach that baseline end game power, you will have a much higher opportunity to get pitch because you have grinded to that point. You've unlocked the access to getting better gear. That's the way I see it. I see it as like you have grinded and now you've unlocked access to getting better gear. You've reached a point where better gear is more available to you through grinding. That's the way that I see it. That's the way that I think of MapleStory. And again, you could totally disagree with me if you want. That's totally fine. The reason why I like this solution is because it rewards you for getting stronger and incentivizes you to grind and get stronger on your character because you'll unlock the ability to get better gear. That's the way that I see it. The other solutions, I feel like they might prevent you from continuously getting stronger and stronger and stronger and wanting to keep grinding. Because if you were able to just, clear Damien every week and then you're eventually guaranteed an eye patch, people's mules definitely would just all have eye patches, or people that just play week to week would all have the same gear as somebody who plays the game every single day, no matter what. Now, that's a bit of a different conversation. Like, should somebody who plays the game once a week and does weeklies have the same gear as somebody who plays every day? For me personally, I think if you play every day, you probably should have better gear than somebody who plays weekly or somebody who plays seasonally. Now, again, this doesn't have to be the only way that they implement a sort of pity. They could add other systems as well that make it so that you get a guaranteed set amount, or like a pitched boss coin that you get from all the bosses. Then you could use those coins to just buy whatever pitched boss you want. All of those things are valid solutions and have their pros and cons. You know what I mean? I just personally think that the extreme bosses solution is best overall. That's the way that I see it. But another thing that people bring up about this, but this is a different problem in the game, is that how long would it take to implement these bosses? It would take forever. Like, I'm not saying this would be easy. This would definitely take forever to implement, and it would just take so long. And like, imagine all the bosses that they would have to do, and what if they're not clearable? Like, who knows? You know what I mean? There's so many issues that could come up with this. But in a perfect world, I think that this is a very good solution. That's the way that I see it. So this is how I reached my conclusion. For the people that were commenting on my other video, a lot of people didn't quite understand what I was saying, or maybe they had their criticisms about it. 100%. I want you guys to criticize this. Let me know if the logic is flawed. Let me know what could be better, and if reaching this conclusion makes sense or not. Because if it doesn't, then that's totally okay, and I'm okay with that opinion. You know what I mean? But this is why I reached this conclusion, because I thought about all of the steps that led up to it and how it affects the game. And in reality, I think that the extreme boss solution in a perfect world would be the best, because not only does it incentivize you to get stronger, so the people that have been playing for a long time, have grinded a lot, they get rewarded even more. And then the people who haven't played a lot, they have something to look forward to. They have something to grind towards and obtain. That's the way that I look at it. Now, again, if you have any questions, definitely leave a comment. I'm very interested in hearing what you guys think. Another thing that's really important that I want to hear you guys think is like, is this entire conversation blown out of proportion? Because honestly, if you reach this point in the video, I think it is. I think it is. I think people stress out about this way more than they should. But to be honest with you, like, you know, I make MapleStory videos about, you know, guides or whatever is topical in the moment. And this is topical. I see that people talk about this all the time. So I wanted to give you my input on it. I get asked about it on stream all the freaking time too. So there it is. If you appreciated this video, I would greatly appreciate if you subscribe and check out some of my other videos. Again, I am not a doomer. I am not a doomer. This is just simply my analysis of what the situation is right now. Maybe you could call me a dumbass if you think I'm an idiot and everything went over your head. That's totally fine. But I'm definitely looking forward to reading those people's comments that drop those paragraphs and like they really like put their thought and time into the comments. 100%. That all being said though, if you got to the very end of this video, I want you to say the word dreamy. I want you to say the word dreamy because that's a pitch item and it sounds cool. So say the word dreamy if you watch the entire thing. And with that all being said though, pull up to the Twitch obviously and have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. Shout out to my members: Blazefire, Shooms, Shagad, Ravi Espa, Koga, Skittles, Dante Victory, CK, Jay, Kyle, Vampiric X, Fresh and Juicy, Assassin, Henzo, Henrique, and Kelvin. I appreciate you guys so much. And thank you everybody who submitted fan art. You can always submit it in the Discord and it'll be put at the end of every video. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.